What's up, guys? Thought I would do another video for you today. So I wanted to talk about Mr. Christopher Ingham. So obviously, you guys will know my thoughts on him. I've spoken a lot about him on my channel, and I've spoken a lot about what he did. At the end of the day, everyone knows what Chris Ingham did. Everyone knows what he is at the end of the day, and people are never gonna stop talking about it. People are not going to stop talking about it until he admits what he did. This is the thing. This is my stance on it. I will only stop talking about what he did when he actually admits that he did what he did. At this point, there's no point in him trying to deny it anymore. At the end of the day, we all know that he's too scared to admit what he did. He knows that if he admits what he did, that would be the end of them, and it would be the end of their channel completely. At the end of the day, him admitting what he did would destroy their channel completely. And I think it would come as a nasty shock to all of those people who have tried to defend him over the past however many years. I can't imagine how they would react if Chris ever did admit to it. I think they would die of shock if he admitted to it, because they've tried to defend him and claim he's innocent for however many years. Every time people have spoken about what he did, you've got these idiots that have tried to claim he's innocent. And those are the people that I would love to see be proven wrong. I would love to see them get a slap in the face if he was to admit what he did. Because it would come as a bit of a slap in the face to them, and it would probably make them feel sick to their stomachs, knowing that they've defended him, all these years. But we all know that the reality of the situation is that he's never going to admit to what he did. I mean, that's all anyone wants. People know it would be the right thing for him to do, and it would be the decent thing to do, would be for him to admit what he did. And until he admits that he did what he did, people are not going to stop talking about it. I'm not going to stop talking about it, and nobody else is going to stop talking about it. If he wants people to stop talking about it and stop bringing it up and stop mentioning it and stop, whatever, then he needs to admit to what he did. He needs to admit that he did what he did instead of continuously trying to deny it and claim that the allegations are not true, when we all know that they are. You've got to look at it. There's so much evidence that proves that he's not exactly innocent. Here are the three things. There are at least three things that come to mind. A, they've not been back to Disneyland. They've not been back to Orlando, Florida, in the 8 years since that happened. Since it supposedly what happened. They've not been back They've not been back to Orlando, Florida. The other thing that has become very noticeable is that when they're here in the UK, Chris hardly shows his face in any of the vlogs. Obviously, when they're away in Dubai, or they're away on the Arctic road trip or whatever, or they're on their band trip around Europe, you see him in most of the vlogs, pretty much most of the time. But when they're obviously, like recently, for example, they've been back in the UK for about a week before going off to Dubai, and we've not seen him in any of the vlogs. And I think that really does sort of prove a point. I think we all know that when they're here in the UK, I think that proves that when they're here in the UK, Chris is scared to show his face. That has become so blatantly obvious, is that that when they're here in the UK, Chris is too scared to show his face, because he knows that everybody knows what he did, and he knows that there are a lot of people who would love to wring his neck. At the end of the day, it's ridiculous. I mean, as I said, if he actually admitted to what he did, I would stop going on about it. I would stop bringing it up. I would stop talking about it. And I think a lot of people would do that. But people are not going to do that until he admits what he did. He wants people to stop talking about it. He wants people to stop bringing it up. He wants people to stop mentioning it, he wants people to stop going on about it, then he needs to admit to what he did. That's the only way he's going to get it to go away, is by admitting to what he did. We all know what he did. We all know that he did what he did. Yeah, he'll keep telling people that the allegations are not true and that they shouldn't be believed. But we all know the allegations are 100% true. We all know there's no doubting how that the allegations are true. At the end of the day, he's never actually shown any sort of evidence that proves he's actually innocent. And this is the third thing I forgot to mention, is that yes, he has never actually shown any sort of proper evidence that proves that he's innocent. I mean, yeah, well, the only thing that he's ever done is done that big video where he didn't do anything, and of course he was gonna do that. It was always gonna I'm on a YouTube channel say, oh, I didn't do anything, I'm not this, I'm not that. It was never done at home on his channel and go, yeah, I did do it. You know, he was never done to admit to what he did. He was always done to deny it. You know, people have seen that video and they think, oh, he's innocent, you know, da 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 da. But you can tell he's not. When you watch that video of him admitting what he did, as well of him, you know, denying it, it just looks like he's basically reading from a piece of paper or something like that. It looks like he's reading words. You know, not that it felt like there was no sincerity to any of the words. It felt like he didn't mean anything that he was saying. It felt like it felt like nothing. It didn't feel like he was being genuine. It just felt like he was reading a load of words that he'd written down on a piece of paper. But it's at the end of the day, it's very easy to sit in front of a camera and say, "Oh, I didn't do anything." Anyone can do that, even if they are guilty of something. Anyone can sit in front of a camera and say they didn't do anything. I could sit in front, if I was guilty of something, I could sit in front of the camera and say I didn't do it. It'd be very easy for me to do that. But the problem with people, the thing with people like myself and others, for example, is that if they did wrong, they would admit to what they did. The reason I admitted to it was like the business that happened last year. The reason I admitted to that is because there was evidence that proved what I did, of course. But at the end of the like, for example, people seem to think it was me that sent the threats to the Inghams, threatening to rape the girls. Now, if that was me, if it was me that had done that, I would have admitted that a very long time ago. I wouldn't be sat. I wouldn't have, I wouldn't be denying it if I knew I had done it. I would have admitted that, and I would have held my hands up and said, "Yes, I did do it." I'm not going to deny something I know I'm guilty of. I'm not Chris Ingham who would. I'm not the sort of person to deny something when I know I did it. When I know I did it. You know, if I had done that, I would have admitted that. You know, simple as that. Obviously, you know, I'm sure the Inghams would love people to stop talking about the allegations and stop bringing it up and stop mentioning it, but people are never gonna do that. People are not gonna stop talking about what he did until he admits it. But he will never admit it because he's too scared to do that. He's too scared to admit what he did. You know, he's too scared to admit that he actually did anything. You know, that he, you know, to admit everything, basically. That is what people want. People want him to admit to, sleeping with, to cheating on his wife and sleeping with fans, to grooming and sending sexually inappropriate messages to teenage girls. When he admits to that, people will stop talking about it. When he admits to that, when he admits to doing that, I will quite happily stop talking about it, and I will quite happily stop doing videos mentioning it and bringing it up. But until he admits it, no one is going to stop talking about it. I'm not going to stop talking about it. Nobody's going to stop talking about it. Because, why should anybody stop talking about it when he hasn't admitted to what he did? People will only stop once he finally decides to do the decent thing and do what would be the right thing and admit to what he did. Until then, none of this is going away. It's not going to stop being mentioned. People are not going to stop bringing it up. People are not going to stop doing videos about it and talking about it. It's going nowhere. all anyone wants is for him to actually do the right thing and admit to doing what he did. But he's too scared to do that, because if he did that, it would be game over for them, and it would be game over for their channel. Him admitting to what he did would destroy their channel completely. If he ever admitted to what he did, they would never be able to show their faces on YouTube again. That's it. Their channel would be done. There would be no. If he ever admitted that, there would be no going back from that. Their channel would be destroyed. It would be game over for them completely. They would never be able to show their faces on YouTube again, and he knows that, which is why he will never admit to it. Because it would, he knows that consequences it would have for him. He knows that it would, the damage it would do to his channel, to the channel. He knows that it would destroy them. He knows that it would have, the consequences that that him admitting that to what he did would be major consequences. And that's the thing. There wouldn't be, if he admitted to what he did, it wouldn't just have minor consequences. The consequences that would have would be, pretty major for the most part. But as I said, this is never gonna go away. People are never gonna stop talking about it. And they're never gonna stop talking about what he did, as far as I'm concerned. Because at the end of the day, it's not going away until he admits it. Why should people stop talking about it when he hasn't even admitted to what he did? He'll never be brave enough or brave enough to actually admit what he did. He'll always be too scared to do that. But we all know that he did what he did. Which is why I'm gonna keep talking about it. I'm gonna keep bringing it up. I don't care if people don't like the fact that I keep bringing it up, or I don't like the fact that I keep mentioning it. Don't watch. If you don't like the fact that I keep bringing it up, don't watch. I'm perfectly happy for you to not watch my videos if you don't like the fact that I keep bringing it up about what Chris did. Because I'm never gonna stop doing that until he actually admits what he did. Nor me, I nor anyone else is gonna stop talking about it. That's the way it is, and that's the way it's always going to be. People will stop talking about it if he wants people to stop talking about it, then he needs to admit to what he did. Until then, nothing's gonna change. It's not that people are not gonna stop bringing it up. People are not gonna stop not gonna stop mentioning it. It's never gonna go away. It's always going. We are always going to be talking about it. We are always going to be raising. We are always going to be raising awareness of Chris and what he is, because people deserve to know what he is. People deserve to know what he did. People deserve to know why he's so controversial, and why there's so much, why people hate his guts so much. Well, there you go. So I hope you enjoyed this little video. I just wanted to, talk about that and say, why I talk about it as much as I do, and why everyone talks about it as much as they do. It's never going away until he admits it. Simple as that. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you for another one later on. Bye bye.